Hello, everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome all of you to this educational program, which is going to be based on Overdue textbook series. I also would like to welcome all our dear students in all grades, and more precisely, our students in grade 12, to my lesson, which is going to be about reading comprehension, summary making, and translation. If you are interested in these sub-skills, please keep watching our channel. I'll see you after a short break. Dear students, welcome back to my lesson. As I have already said, today I'll be dealing with reading comprehension, summary making, and translation. Now let's have a look at these three skills or sub-skills. We have reading comprehension, which is a component element in your exam paper. It will be allotted 80 marks. Then, from the same reading comprehension, we are going to summarize a paragraph. It will be allotted 20 marks. And at the end, you will have two different kinds of translation. All of them will get 30 marks. Now let's concentrate on the first skill, which is reading comprehension. Let's have a look at types of the reading comprehension texts. You may have a text about a story, so a narrator who narrates a story, or you will have a chart, a table, or you will have an email. Now, all the reading comprehension text should have between 250 and 400 words. Let's have a look at the types of questions that you will have. You will have two types of questions. The first one is called multiple choice question. You will have 5 items. Every item will be allotted 10 marks, so the total is 50 marks. The second type is productive or open-ended questions. You will have only 4 questions. Every question is allotted 7.5 marks, so the total is 30. That's why the reading comprehension question will be allotted, 80 marks. Now let's concentrate on the multiple choice questions. What kind of questions you will be asked to answer? You will be asked about questions related to the title, for example, of the passage, or reference words. You will have one word, underlined word, and you will be asked, what does the word refer to? Or you will be asked to give the main idea of a certain paragraph. The last multiple choice question can be about synonyms. Synonyms are words that have the same meaning, and antonyms, which are opposites. Now, what about the productive or the open-ended question? They are questions intended or designed to encourage the students to give a full, meaningful answer using the information in the passage. And here, don't have to be creative, don't have to be fruitful. Why? Because you are asked to give questions and answer related only to the pieces of information that you are given in the reading passage. Now let's start our reading comprehension task. So we have, first of all, you have to read the questions first. Don't read the text first. I always advise my students or learners to have a look at the questions in order to have an overall idea about what is going on in the passage. So the question says, from A, B, C, and D, choose the correct answer. Let's have a look at the first question. The passage, or the reading comprehension passage, is narrative or descriptive or informative or argumentative. Here we speak about the style of the writing. Then the question, number 2, the narrator is he a colonel in the Air Force Army, or a leader of a group of soldiers, or an army expert in map reading, or a boatman who used to be a soldier? Question number 3, what is the synonym of the word unfailing in paragraph number 1? Is it amusing? Does it mean constant, or conscious, or unsuccessful? Question number 4, what does the word it, this is called a reference question, what does the word it in paragraph 2 refer to? Does it refer to army, or reason or course or practical test. The last question in the multiple choice task is, why did the soldiers smile? Why the narrator was looking at the map? Why did they smile? Did they smile because their leader found their way back, or one of the soldiers told them a joke, or they knew about their leader's problem, or they had no idea about reading maps? Now let's move to task number 2. Answer the following questions referring to the text. Again, this is not set book question. Here we have to stick to the pieces of information that you have in your passage. So, the first question in task 2, which is the 6th question in the reading comprehension task, why does the narrator hate the map reading course in the army? Of course, there are reasons. You have to give the reasons. Question number 7, what was the mission of the narrator? Question 8, why did the narrator feel like throwing the map into the water? So it's clear from the questions that we are talking about a map, we are talking about soldiers, okay? The last question is, what made the narrator feel foolish? After reading the questions, after grasping their meanings, after having an idea about what is going on in the passage, we read the passage. So concentrate here, follow with me. Some people seem to have been born with an unfailing sense of direction. Even when lost in a forest, they find their way home as surely as a dog picks up the scent of a haunted man. The secret is probably that they never feel lost. Others, like myself, can even manage to get lost in a department store. While in the army, there was nothing I disliked so much as the map reading course, for the simple reason that I always feel lost. Even with a map in my hand, 4 weeks, I had lain awake at night thinking of the practical test I would have to face at the end of the course. I became obsessed by it. At last, the evil day arrived. It was to be my responsibility to lead a small band of soldiers back to the camp from the middle of the nowhere. We were driven out in a closed lorry and left in a plowed field with instructions to get back as quickly as possible. Well knowing my abilities, the soldiers smiled as they saw me looking at the map, and they made all sorts of helpful suggestions. Folded the map up, put it in my pocket, and said that we would head east. After walking through cornfields for over an hour, we came to a wide stream. I again looked at the map. It seemed to be covered with masses of thin blue lines, but which particular line was this stream? In despair, we sat down in a cool shade, and I felt like throwing the map into the water. About 15 minutes later, a boat passed, and I asked the boatman if he could give us a lift to the near village. I pretended that we had been out for a walk and somehow got lost. The boatman invited us on board, and I felt very foolish when he told me that he had helped hundreds of soldiers to pass their map reading test. Not long afterwards, we got off the boat and, following the boatsman's instructions, took a bus into the village. When we got back to the camp, the colonel congratulated me on having led the man back to the camp so quickly. So as you can see, it's a very easy, very simple reading passage. Okay, now your task here to go back to the questions and to answer them. Now let's go back to question number 1. After reading the passage, you can decide on the following: whether the passage is narrative or descriptive, informative or argumentative. After choosing your choice, you have to go back to the text in order to justify and to check whether your answer is correct or not. Now, according to this passage, it's, of course, narrative, and this is my proof. In the text, you have a lot of verbs which are used in the simple past, along with some linking verbs or cohesive devices which show the sequence of events that took place in the past. So the verbs are was, disliked, had, and the linking word or words or phrases are 4 weeks. Then we have another proof. We have the verb arrived, and we have at last. So there is a sequence of events here. The last proof, we have sat down, felt, past, asked, could give, and we have about 15 minutes later. So it's clear that a person is narrating something. That's why the nature or the style of the text is mostly narrative. This is the way you can justify your answer. Now let's move to question number 2. The narrator is a colonel in the Air Force Army, a leader of a group of soldiers, an army expert in map reading, a boatman who used to be a soldier. Through the events that we have already seen in the passage, we are sure that the narrator is a leader of a group of soldiers. To justify this, I have to go back to the text. So it's clear here that the person has a responsibility to lead a small band of soldiers. So he is their leader. Question number 3. What's the synonym of unfailing? In paragraph number 1, here it is written, some people seem to have been born with an unfailing sense of direction. Unfailing is the opposite of failing. So we are talking about something good, something successful. Our choice is constant, which means always there, even in times of difficulty or trouble. Back to our justification, they find their way home as surely. This is extremely important, as a dog picks up the scent of a haunted man. Number 4, what does the word it in paragraph 2 refer to? Of course, it refers to something singular. Let's go back to the text. We have 4 choices. Maybe it refers to army, or course, or reason, or practical test. Most of the time, it's not always, most of the time, the word refers to the nearest one. And most of the time, it exists in the same sentence. So it's clear that our answer is practical test. So it refers to practical test. The final question in multiple choice question is, why did the soldier smile while the narrator was looking at the map? It's written here. Well, knowing my abilities, which is extremely important here, the soldiers smiled as they saw me looking at the map. So this adverbial phrase is extremely important, while knowing my abilities. So the soldiers know everything about their leader. So the answer is what? Very good. They knew about their leader's problem. The problem is that he does not know how to decipher, to understand, and to find his way through using a map. Now let's move to the second type of questions, or question, which is the open-ended question. Have a look here at question number 6. Why does the narrator hate the map reading course in the army? Through the events that took place in the passage, we know that the narrator hates the map reading course in the army because he gets lost easily and doesn't know his way back. Notice here that I have used a full sentence. Don't give fragments. Why? Because you need to have a full mark. To have full mark, you need to provide the person who is going to correct your exam paper with the full sentence. Let's justify our answer. Back to the text. These are the pieces of information that justify our answer. So others like myself can even manage to get lost in a department store, or I always feel lost even with a map in my hand. The following question, question number 7, what was the mission of the narrator? The narrator is going to make something special for the army, which is what? The mission of the narrator was to lead a small band of soldiers back to the camp from an unknown area. An unknown area, which means a very far area from the principal area. Let's justify our answer. It was to be my responsibility to lead a small band of soldiers back to the camp from the middle of nowhere. Question number 8. Why did the narrator feel like throwing the map into the water? Which means he wanted to throw the map to get rid of the map. Why? According to the events that took place in the passage, the narrator felt like throwing the map into the water because he was desperate, as he found it difficult to understand the directions of the map. Again, we have to justify our answer by going back to the text. The word despair, which is a noun from desperate, which means he lost hope. He lost hope of understanding the map, as it is clear here. It seemed to be covered with masses of thin blue lines. But which particular line was this stream? Now let's have a look at the last question of the reading comprehension, which is the first part of our lesson today. What made the narrator feel foolish? What is the cause? What's the factor? The narrator felt foolish because the boatman discovered that the narrator and his soldiers were among those who had lost their way back to the camp. Let's justify. This is our justification. I felt very foolish when he told me that he had helped hundreds of soldiers to pass their map reading test. So it's clear that here that the boatman has discovered that this narrator or this leader of these soldiers is telling lies to him. Now let's move to summary making. Of course, the summary making is going to be taken from the reading comprehension. You will be asked to summarize one paragraph. For example, read paragraph 3 and in no less than 4 sentences of your own, describe how the soldiers got back to the camp. Of course, don't use fruitful ways of choosing a sentence from the beginning of the paragraph, another from the middle, and 1 or 2 from the end of the paragraph. This is not summary making. This is something I don't know. Okay? You have to summarize the way I'm going to show you now. So here you have 4 sentences. Every sentence is allotted 5 marks. The total is 50 marks. Okay, now this is paragraph 3. We start reading from the paragraph. If you find something important, you just underline it or highlight it, and you will use it in your own words. Let's have a look. Well, knowing my abilities, the soldiers smiled as they saw me looking at the map, and they made all sorts of helpful suggestions. Is there anything here related to our question? I don't think so. We carry on. I folded the map up, put it in my pocket, and said to that we would head east. After walking through cornfields for over an hour, we came to a wide stream. I'm sorry, we have to cross all these pieces of information because they do not have any relationship with our question. Now we carry on. I again looked at the map. It seemed to be covered with masses of thin blue lines, but which particular line was this stream? In despair, we sat down in a cool shade and felt like throwing the map into the water. Does this have any relation to our question? No. About 15 minutes later, a boat passed and I asked the boatman if he could give us a lift. This is very important. This is extremely important. Why? Because this is the first sentence that you can use to answer the summary making question. So all these words can be summarized in the following way. So he asked who he here, the narrator, the leader of the soldiers, a boatman to give him or to give them a lift to the near village. We carry on. I pretended that we had been out for a walk and somehow got lost. The boatman invited us on board and felt very foolish when he told me that he had helped hundreds of soldiers to pass their map reading test. Do you have any piece of information that has a close relation to our question? Yes. This is the piece of information. I pretended that we had been out for a walk and somehow got lost. So he gave the reason, okay, to the boatman. Here we can talk about he played a trick on the boatman by saying that they were lost while having a walk to convince him to help them. Then we cross all this part and we move. Not long afterwards, we got off the boat and following the boatman's instructions. This is very important. So the boatman is trying to give them instructions to arrive to their destination. So here we can talk about this idea. They took instructions from the boatman. Took a bus, which is extremely important, into the village. Okay? So here he is taking means of transport. They took a bus back to the camp. As soon as you get the 4 pieces of information, I myself think that there's no need to read anymore. Why? Because you have got your goal, and if you do this, you save time. So here are the 4 ideas. Your task here is now to connect the sentences together by crossing the repetition and add some linking verbs to get a paragraph. For example, he asked. Who asked here? We cannot start our summary making sentence by saying he. Who is he? We have to clarify. So he is the narrator. The narrator asked the boatman to give them a lift to the near village. Then, so he played the trick on the boatman. The boatman is a repetition. We have to replace it by an object pronoun by saying that they were lost while having walked to convince him to help them. After that, these are sequence of words or linking verbs, linking words, cohesive devices to show the movement that takes place between the sentences. After that, they took instructions from the boatman, which is him here. Finally, they took a bus back to the camp. Now, the final draft looks like this. You have to put an indentation, which is a small space at the beginning of the paragraph, and the sentence, your paragraph should look like this. The narrator asked the boatman to help him and his soldiers by giving them a lift to the near village. So he played the trick on him by saying that they were lost while having walked to convince him to help them. After that, he and his soldiers took some instructions from him. Finally, they took a bus back to the camp. This is my trial. You can give a better summary making. The last part of our lesson here is translation. I'm going to translate a text from English to Arabic. This question is allotted 20 marks. So the question says, translate the first paragraph into good Arabic. The paragraph is from your reading comprehension, the first paragraph. If you skim the paragraph, you will find maybe this word, maybe, which is not known, unfailing. It can be translated into لا تخطئ or ثابت. The word secret, it can be translated into سر. Okay? Now, if you want to translate this paragraph, it should be like this. يبدو بعض الناس وكأنهم قد ولدوا بحاسة لا تخطئ في معرفة الاتجاهات، حتى إنهم عندما يظلون سيرهم في الغابة فإنهم يجدون طريقهم للبيت بسهولة، وربما يكمن السر في عدم شعورهم بالضياع، وآخرون مثلي لا يمكنهم تدبر أمرهم في مخزن سلع كبير فيضيعون فيه. This is my translation. You may provide a better one. The last question in our presentation today is translation from Arabic to English language. Here I'd like to have some words to talk about. You are going to be given 2 sentences in Arabic language. The original of these sentences are English sentences in your textbook. So don't worry, you have learned everything, you have had an idea about everything. Most of them could be set book questions. Translate the following 2 sentences into good English. The question is allotted 10 marks. The first sentence: تهدف المحطة الفضائية الدولية إلى إجراء تجارب من غير الممكن إجراؤها على الأرض. Okay? Now, in order to avoid word-by-word definition, I advise my students to get some words in isolation and try to translate them, taking into consideration the context of the sentence. For example, I'd like to talk about تجارب. تجارب is not التجربة الحياتية, okay? It's not experience. I'm talking about تجارب مخبرية, which are experiments. إجراؤها, okay? It could be to conduct or to carry out an experiment. So my translation is this. This is the original sentence that you will have in your overview textbook. The International Space Station aims to conduct experiments that are not possible on Earth. And you notice here that E is capitalized. Why? Because we are talking about the planet Earth. We are not talking about land. The last sentence is إن المسافة الهائلة بين كوكب الأرض والفضاء قادت العلماء إلى تطوير اتصالات لاسلكية. Again, I have to decide on some words. الهائلة can be translated into enormous or huge. قادت, it's the verb قاد, which means to lead, but since it's put in the past, we use the word led. اتصالات لاسلكية, it can be translated into wireless communication. So this is the original sentence. Again, you will have the sentence, the exact words in your overview textbook. The enormous distance between the Earth and space led scientists to develop wireless communication. Now, this is the end of our lesson. Let me remind you what you have seen in this presentation. today we have dealt with reading comprehension question. I gave you some recommendations how to manage the questions or your answers while in your exams. Then we moved to summary making, which is taken from the reading comprehension. I showed you how to deal with the sentences and how to link them together to get a coherent paragraph. And the last thing, I dealt with translation. I hope that you have enjoyed my lesson. I hope that I have been convincing all along this period. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for watching.